Are you planning your Wi-Fi setup or struggling with dead spots? Don't worry, I've got you covered. I've tested out Wi-Fi performance in various scenarios and I've come up with this so that you have full coverage. Stick around for data insights at the end, but first, let's get to the topic at hand. Now, the first and probably the most important thing is router placement. You simply cannot get away with bad router placement. This is key. Just follow these three simple things. First, keep your router in a central location. Avoid corners at all costs. Second, keep the router elevated, not on the floor. And third, avoid places where there might be interference or there are other appliances nearby, like microwave, oven, fridge, etc. I'm sure you must have heard about 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 6 gigahertz, and you must be wondering what exactly is it that you need. So as we move up the frequencies, the range decreases as well as the penetration through objects as well decreases. So 2.4 gigahertz would cover somewhere around 2000 square feet, but 5 gigahertz on the other hand would only cover 1000 square feet, and 6 gigahertz would cover 600 square feet. So if you want low latency, fast internet, 5 gigahertz should be enough for most people. 6 gigahertz is for people who really care about low latency, low pings. 2.4 gigahertz on the other hand is extremely crowded. There's a lot of interference in that frequency band, and it should be used mostly for casual browsing. So how many routers do you actually need? Let's find out. So this is the cheat sheet for apartment size versus the kind of coverage you want depending on the frequency. As you can see, for 2.4 gigahertz, you don't need many routers, but as you go up the frequency, you'll start needing more routers. The reason is very simple. As you go up the frequency, the penetration of higher frequencies is lower, the speed is better, but the range is less. And you should follow this chart as it is. If you don't, then you will get dead spots or it'll be just too slow because of low signal strength. Now, the number of routers recommended here, if greater than 1, you should be going with a mesh system. Now, why the mesh system? Mesh system is because you are connected on a single SSID or a single Wi-Fi. But on the other hand, if you try to use a repeater, that will create a new network or a new SSID. And then your device would have to switch between, and that gets frustrating after a while. Repeater, on the other hand, if you don't choose your repeater cautiously, then there's a chance that your bandwidth will get decreased to half. And also the repeater needs to be in range as well. Mesh routers, on the other hand, they cover a larger space and they are interconnected within themselves. If you're going above 2000 square feet, mesh router, I would recommend. They always work. And now, as I mentioned, these are some of my findings. So this is the chart between signal strength and distance from the router. Now, if you see, this is kind of a zigzag line. The reason over here is because if there is low interference or if there are less obstacles, the Wi-Fi signal becomes better. In this chart, lower is better. So the signal strength is the highest when the distance from the router is roughly 5 feet. But as the distance increases, you can see 5 gigahertz drops first and then the 2.4 gigahertz. If this chart is a little confusing, then I've picked a different chart which might be a little more pleasing. So in this, the signal strength is from 1 to 10 simply, 10 being the highest. So the signal strength is the highest when the distance from the router is lowest, and as you increase in distance from the router, the signal strength keeps on decreasing. 5 gigahertz is the first one to decrease beyond the weak signal threshold. And 2.4 gigahertz, as you can see, covers a much larger area. 6 gigahertz, on the other hand, performs 30%, roughly 30 to 40% worse than 5 gigahertz as well. And penetration capabilities of 6 gigahertz is even worse than 5 gigahertz. So you can see as to why I recommended so many routers with a 6 gigahertz setup versus a 5 gigahertz. And then if you compare the 5 to the 2.4. So there you have it. It's backed by data. You can see over here how we calculated averages and what were the data points exactly. So this is an example of one of the apartments that we conducted. You can see how many data points we collected. Overall, we collected data points from over 10 apartments and then collated it, and that is how we came up with this entire guide. Let me know in the comment section below if this was helpful.